Welcome, my friends, to Dawn of the New Earth. My name is Morgue. I'm an ex-Christian revealing hidden knowledge to raise the consciousness of the world. And today we are talking about Luciferianism, not to be confused with Satanism. They are completely different systems. So today we're going to be looking at what Luciferianism is. And this is going to be good information because it's actually very difficult to find information about Luciferianism because it's related to esoterica, occult, hidden knowledge, secret societies, and we're going to be exploring this in depth. It's going to be good. You don't want to miss it. So that's what we're doing today. We're going to get started, but as always, please like and subscribe. And if you want my channel to grow and you want to help me reach more people with this information, become a member here on YouTube or Patreon by hitting the join button right below this video. And if you hit it, you can see all the different tiers and the different perks you can get. You can get access to all of our members only videos. There's hundreds of them by now. And there's a new one every week. And we're actually having one right after this video called Do You Actually Have Two Minds? As we explore the theory of bicameralism. It's going to be really interesting. So I also want to remind you that my new book, my third book, Cosmogenesis, The Awakening Universe, is available right now. Came out 2 weeks ago, so it's very new. And it describes the evolution of reality from the beginning of time to the end of time as the universe understanding and exploring itself. And if you don't know where to begin, because this is the third book in the series, then start with my first book, Neogenesis, Dawn of the New Mind. That's where to begin. The link where you can get my books is in the bio, or not the bio, in the description of this video. All right. Oh, and also make sure you follow me on Spotify. Link is in the description as well for my podcast there. All right, my friends, we are talking about Luciferianism. Now, like I said, one of the reasons why I want to discuss this is I put out a video maybe like a month or so ago called Satanism versus Luciferianism, because a lot of people get Satanism and Luciferianism confused. They think they're the same thing, but they're not. They're completely different systems. They're actually the opposite of each other. But we're going to dig deeper into Luciferianism because it's a very mysterious system. Because like I said before, it's associated with hidden knowledge, esoterica, occultism, etc. And so it's not like a systematic religion like how Satanism is. It's a set of beliefs and principles that certain groups adhere to and follow. And these groups might not even call themselves Luciferians or Luciferianism. So it's really hard to find information out there. And if you go online and trying to find information about Luciferianism, you can find every now and then you'll find some books. But most of the books out there that say they're about Luciferianism really aren't. They're usually more like Satanism. And, you know, it gets to a point where, okay, people can define things the way they like. But from my research in the occult, in systems that have followed Luciferian principles throughout history, most of the books that I have seen out there don't teach that and don't talk about that. Okay, so we're going to start right now. And I'm going to be reading from an article. And this is actually a really great website. So this website is called learnreligions.com. Just learnreligions.com. I highly recommend it. It's really good because surprisingly, I found a lot of interesting information that's pretty accurate about Luciferianism on this site. Now, I wouldn't say it's completely accurate, but it's much more accurate than a lot of different resources that I've seen out there. So we're going to start exploring this and discovering what Luciferianism is. And let's just start and begin because there's a lot to talk about here. So this is, like I said, this article on learnreligions.com is called The Principles of Luciferianism, and it's written by Catherine Bayer. So Catherine begins by saying, Luciferianism is not a defined religion, but rather a belief system that admires and venerates the characteristics and personality traits exhibited by Lucifer as represented in the literature and the various books of the Hebrew Bible. Okay, so there's a couple things that I want to say about this. Catherine's absolutely right. Luciferianism is not like a structured, defined religion, which is why you can't really go out there and there are certain groups that might call themselves like Luciferian churches or whatever, but in terms of what I consider to be traditional Luciferianism, not really. It's a set of beliefs. Now, when Catherine says they venerate and admire the personality traits exhibited by Lucifer as presented in the literature of the Bible, that's kind of true. But as we're going to see, the archetype of Lucifer predates Christianity. The archetype of Lucifer is associated with much more ancient figures than what's described in the Bible. And that's one of the big differences from Satanism and Luciferianism, is that Satanism is very reactive, in that there's Christianity and you have Satanism as standing in opposition to Christianity. It's kind of a reaction to Christianity, and was sort of birthed out of Christianity. Where Luciferianism, the principles that it adheres to and the archetypes associated with it are much older than Christianity. It's set apart and stands alone. It's not dependent upon Christianity. It wasn't born from Christianity. And we'll be talking about that in more detail. So Catherine continues by saying, although Luciferianism is often confused with Satanism due to the fact that Satanism is defined as a fallen Lucifer, in reality, Luciferians don't worship Satan in any way, and instead model themselves after the original Lucifer, a character of enlightenment, independence, and progressiveness. Yes, so that's true. Luciferians do not worship Satan. To be fair, LaVeyan Satanists don't worship Satan either. They don't believe in Satan as a real being. They see Satan as an archetypal figure. But Luciferians, correct, do not worship Satan. And to be clear, Luciferians see Satan as being the opposite of Lucifer. So Lucifer represents wisdom, reason, freedom, progressiveness, empathy, collectivism, light, love, knowledge, apotheosis, transcendence. Whereas Satan represents darkness, the flesh, the earthly, the carnal, dominance, power, anger, aggression. Complete opposite archetypes. So, again, to be clear, most Luciferians see Lucifer as either a completely different archetype, or, such as like Madame Blavatsky in Theosophy, sees Satan as being the dark side of Lucifer, or Lucifer's like dark aspect. So that's very important to really demarcate here. But you'll notice the properties of Luciferianism and Lucifer, the archetype of Lucifer, as Catherine describes here, is enlightenment, independence, and progressiveness. Now, you may that might sound a little familiar, right? Enlightenment, independence, progressiveness. One may even say liberty. Now, if you take a look at the Statue of Liberty, that is actually a statue of a Lucifer. The Statue of Liberty is a statue of a Lucifer. It was designed by a Freemason, and the torch represents the light of reason. You have the 7 rays of the sun from the crown of liberty. And if you look at the founding fathers of America, many of the founding fathers of America were Freemasons. And Freemasonry is a system that could be considered Luciferian. Now, but when I say that, though, that's very, very clear. That doesn't mean it is satanic. That doesn't mean that it has anything to do with the devil. To say that a system is Luciferian means that it upholds these principles of enlightenment, reason, and freedom, etc. So you have these various systems, like Masonry, like I mentioned Madame Blavatsky, Helena Blavatsky. She started a group called the Theosophical Society, and the Theosophical Society and Theosophy in general can be considered Luciferian. The religion created by Aleister Crowley, Thelema, could be considered Luciferian, and the and even forms of Gnosticism could be considered Luciferian, and we'll see why. Now, I want to say there are probably many people who would disagree with that, but this is why Luciferianism is a very nebulous term, right? It doesn't mean that everyone who's involved in these systems are going to believe in Luciferianism, but here's what I'm trying to get at. They follow the archetypal pattern or principles. It's less about Because in traditional religions, right, it's about a certain figure and a certain myth and certain rituals and certain things that you do. Whereas this is a general pattern of behavior, a general blueprint. And that's what an archetype is in general, a blueprint. And Lucifer represents a specific kind of blueprint or pattern. This pattern being one of wisdom, reason, enlightenment, higher consciousness, apotheosis, collectivism, etc. So let's continue here. Before we continue, I want to read from my notes a little more background here for you guys. So the name Lucifer comes from the Latin word lux, which means light, and fere, meaning to bring. So in other words, Lucifer literally means light bringer or bearer of light. And in ancient Roman mythology, Lucifer was the name given to the planet Venus when it appeared in the sky just before dawn. So Lucifer was the name. Now this is before the Bible, okay? This is before the Bible came about. Lucifer was the name given to the planet Venus. Specifically, the name given to the planet Venus when it appeared in the sky just before dawn. So the planet Venus appearing in the sky just before dawn, this was called Lucifer, the light bringer, because the sun would come, the dawn would come. And this is why it was known as the morning star. So Lucifer represents the morning star, the planet Venus before the dawn, the light bringer. And so Lucifer was seen as a bringer of the coming day. And so was a symbol of enlightenment, knowledge, and truth. And this predates Christianity. All right, so that's really important to understand. This idea of Lucifer predates Christianity. Now, Lucifer, if you get a Bible today, odds are if you pick up a Bible and flip through it, you won't find the word or name Lucifer in there anywhere. Lucifer only appears in the King James version of the Bible, and I think maybe the New King James version of the Bible, and it appears only one time, and it appears there because of a mistranslation. And it's in Isaiah 14:12, where they're talking to a certain king, or speaking about a certain king, and they're talking about this king who's fallen, and they say, "Oh how you have fallen, O Lucifer." But really, what this meant was, how you have fallen, O morning star. But they translated morning star as Lucifer, and it got confused as a name. And then so you started to have Lucifer begin to, over the years, and as mythologies evolved, in Christianity, they started to conflate Lucifer with Satan. So this is a thing that Christians just kind of made up. Lucifer is an idea that predates Christianity. And Christians just kind of started to merge the idea of Lucifer with Satan, which drew all kinds of confusion, has resulted in all kinds of confusion, because Satan is the opposite of Lucifer. Lucifer is an archetype of light, enlightenment, knowledge, and Satan is ignorance, darkness, destruction. And so they combined these two archetypes together, making, ironically, but makes perfect sense when you look at how effed up the church is, making knowledge, wisdom, and reason synonymous with evil, the ultimate evil. All right. So, Christianity screwing stuff up as usual. And the devil, by the way, Satan originally wasn't even the enemy of God. Satan worked for God. Satan is a word that means adversary or accuser. And so he was like a prosecutor in a court. So if you have a prosecutor in the court, and let's say he's trying to prove that you're guilty, you're probably not going to be a big fan of the prosecutor. But the prosecutor isn't the enemy of the court. He's not the enemy of the judge. He's bringing evidence trying to show that so-and-so. So the devil or Satan was sort of like an agent of God going around trying to test people's faith and point out sin and whatnot. It wasn't until later that Christianity transformed Satan as being the ultimate villain, an enemy of God, and then equated Lucifer with Satan. So it's gotten all messed up and backwards. But Lucifer has more associations. So in various ancient mythologies, the figure associated with the morning star often represented a being of great power, wisdom, and beauty. And you can find this archetype in various different traditions. Like I said, in the Roman tradition, and in the Roman culture, you had Lucifer, which was the reference to Venus in the day, the morning star, herald of the dawn. Well, in Greek culture, you had Prometheus. Prometheus is the Lucifer of Greek culture and Greek mythology. So Prometheus defied the gods by stealing fire representing a symbol of enlightenment and knowledge, and giving it to humanity. So again, by the way, you can see that torch of knowledge associated with the Statue of Liberty, representing that symbol of knowledge and enlightenment. The Promethean myth, clear as the day right there. So you have Prometheus and Lucifer being the same archetype. Now, not only that, but in the Gnostic traditions, you have the being of Sophia, who is a Luciferian archetype. Sophia is the eon of wisdom. And what Sophia is a being of light, known as an eon, and is the eon of wisdom. And Sophia is constantly trying to get humanity to wake up to the fact that they are divine, so that they can transcend the material world and reach the realm of pure light. Sophia is another Luciferian archetype. In Gnostic thought as well, Jesus Christ is seen as a messenger of Sophia, or in some cases, even an avatar of Sophia. So in this case, Jesus Christ, as the bringer of enlightenment, as the bringer of knowledge, is also a Luciferian archetype. Christ, in the Gnostic tradition, as a bearer of knowledge, is the same archetype as Lucifer. And even if you look in the Bible, Jesus calls himself the morning star. Jesus Christ, Son of Light, the morning star. So Jesus Christ, from that perspective, is the same archetype. So you can see Lucifer is associated very much with Roman mythology, with Greek mythology, with Gnostic thought, with the Gnostic interpretation of Sophia and Lucifer, Jesus. So you can see it's very different from Satanism or Satanic ideals, where Satanism and Satanic ideals follow the more Christian interpretation of Satan as being fleshly, carnal, hedonistic, trickster, and it's that's important to understand. There's a big difference here. So let's continue now that we have a little bit of a background on Luciferianism, the different myths that have built it up. Let's take a little closer look at what Luciferianism promotes. So going back to learnreligions.com by Catherine Bayer is going to now list out some of the principles of Luciferianism. And Catherine says, the following list enumerates some of the principles by which Luciferians strive to live. Some items on this list were initially put forward by the Order of the Luciferian Sword and are adapted here with permission. So again, where are these principles coming from? Catherine is saying these principles are coming from the Order of the Luciferian Sword. So, like I said, it's very hard to find information about Luciferianism because it's not a structured formal religion. It's a set of beliefs. It's an archetypal pattern. And it's associated with esoterica and secret societies. And so this is coming from the Order of the Luciferian Sword. What is the Order of the Luciferian Sword? You know, I mean, if you go look up the Order of the Luciferian Sword, there you can't really find much information about it. Let me see if I, you know, just Google Order of the Luciferian Sword. There's not much info out there. And so I can't say, you know, whether, you know, who they are or what they are, etc. But we can look at these principles. And I can tell you, you know, based on my study, how they align with how I have understood the ideals or the patterns of the Luciferian archetype and see how they match up. And by the way, I will say, I forget if I mentioned this, I may have said this already, but if you Google and try and look for books on Luciferianism, they do exist. There are books that will say they'll teach you about Luciferianism, but in my opinion, the books that I have read that say they are about Luciferianism are really just teachings that, in my opinion, are a little different than Satanism, or they're not even differentiating Luciferianism from Satanism. So I don't want to speak for every book out there, but the books that I have tried to look at, not to say that they're not good books, they may have good information in them, but from my understanding and study of Luciferianism, the books that I have found out there don't reflect the true spirit, the true Luciferian spirit. It's more satanic. And in that realm, at least in that ballpark. But let's look at these principles, because these principles are much closer. So, an illuminated being who chooses rather than idolizes. Luciferianism is about the seeking of knowledge from both within and without. And this is very important. This is true. Luciferianism is about seeking knowledge from within and without. Again, huge difference from Satanism. Satanism isn't necessarily about looking for knowledge. Satanism, the main ideas of Satanism is like, hey, do whatever you want as long as you're not hurting others. Like, that's the main thing about Satanism. Do whatever you want as long as you're not hurting anyone else. And that's, you know, not bad, much better than Christianity, but it's not necessarily about transcendence or reaching higher consciousness. In fact, it's about indulging in the carnal and the fleshly. So again, Luciferianism, quite different. And I say that a lot because I just want to really hammer that in, because even though I've put out some videos saying this, I keep seeing, you know, some misunderstandings, like maybe in the comment section or whatever, where people are still conflating Luciferianism with Satanism when they are very different. So while many practitioners do recognize Lucifer as an actual being, they envision him quite differently than Christians, and they are in no way dependent on him in the same way that the followers of other religions regard their key figures. Luciferians model themselves after Lucifer purely by choice, not out of doctrine or expectation. So some Luciferians would believe that Lucifer actually exists, but some don't. And I would say that most Luciferians, or those following the Luciferian path who are involved in like occultism and secret societies and esoterica, don't see Lucifer as a being like how it's described in the Bible, but more as like a force or an archetypal imagery. Some may very well indeed see it as a being of some kind. And to be fair, once we start getting really deep into how reality works, the demarcation between archetype and being starts to become a little more fuzzy. So it is possible that a being does exist that could possibly be referred to as this, or even a network mind that could be associated with this. A subnetwork mind could be associated with this, but that is getting way too in depth as to what we're talking about today. But in its most basic form, like the idea of a being like how it's described in the Bible, like an angel with wings or, you know, something like that. No, most Luciferians see this as an archetype and ideal. And even if they don't, even if they see Lucifer as a real being, it's not about worshiping Lucifer. That would be the opposite of Luciferian ideals. Luciferian ideals is about apotheosis. So Lucifer is here to teach people to become their own gods. Just like Jesus Christ and Gnosticism is teaching people to realize the divine within themselves. Just like the serpent in the Garden of Eden says, when you eat from knowledge, you will become like God. It's not about worship. It's not about any of that. So let's see. Here's another principle: free to act, but accepting of consequences. Luciferians believe that taboos and social expectations should not hamper one from achieving his or her goals. Society and your fellow humans may take issues with your choices, and you are expected to accept the consequences with stoicism if you make poor decisions. So Luciferians believe that taboo and social expectations should not be hamper one. Yeah, I would agree that that is generally correct. Pursuit of wealth and living in prosperity. For Luciferians, wealth is not something to be ashamed of. You are encouraged to strive for success and enjoy the fruits of your labors. You are allowed and even encouraged to take pride in your accomplishments and to highlight them. So a couple things that I want to say here. The heading is a little weird. It says pursuit of wealth and living in prosperity. Now, I do agree that there is nothing wrong with making money if you earned it. If you make money because you earned it, yeah, you shouldn't be ashamed of that. That's fine. There's nothing wrong. You know, it's definitely not like being monks who give up everything and detach. No, there's nothing wrong with making money if you've earned it and being proud of the work that you have done. Now, it's just a weird way to say like pursuit of wealth as though that's a goal. I wouldn't say that that's the case. I would not say that the Luciferian ideal has a goal of pursuing wealth. I would not say that. I would say that the goal of a Luciferian ideal is to achieve higher states of consciousness and to create a new world. And in that journey, one can accrue wealth and perhaps utilize that wealth to achieve their goals, to help create a new world, to help, and there's nothing wrong with just enjoying it as well. So yeah, I would say that this is in general right, but I wouldn't say that pursuit of wealth is a Luciferian goal. It's a weird thing to highlight. I would just say that there's nothing wrong with it. It's a great thing to enjoy life, and one shouldn't be ashamed of it. But one should not be obsessed with it. One should not use it in such a way where it begins to hurt others, etc. Because Luciferian, and the reason why I point this out is because Luciferian is very empathetic and very love and collective focused. So it's definitely antithetical to sort of like the billionaire capitalist hoarding of wealth mindset. And the way this is phrased, it gives that off a little bit, and that is certainly not a Luciferian ideal. So nothing wrong with it. Fine to have it, fine to love and enjoy life, but not to the point where you're like these rich elite billionaire assholes that are destroying the world. That's extremely negative. And the reason why that's antithetical to the Luciferian ideal is because you are preventing others from achieving their own actualization then, because when you have wealth disparity that's so large, you begin to negatively affect the conditions of other human beings and their own pursuit of apotheosis. Let's see, accept and glorify primordial carnal nature. All right, so this is interesting. Let's see if, so let's read this principle and see if I agree with it from what I have learned and studied about this particular tradition. So humans are both rational and physical, according to Luciferianism. Correct, agreed. One should not be ignored or denigrated in order to prioritize the other, and neither impulse should be denied as corrupt or sinful. Luciferians accept and delight in the so-called pleasures of the flesh. Yeah, that's fine. It's not like Satanism. So Satanism makes indulgence in the flesh a primary focus and denies the transcendent, denies the spiritual, denies the metaphysical. Now, if in this, they are saying that you can accept both, that's fine. Yes, there's nothing wrong with pleasure. There's nothing wrong with enjoying carnal pursuits. But ultimately, the goal of Luciferianism is higher consciousness and the pursuit of knowledge. not denying the flesh, yes, embracing the flesh, but it's not a system of the flesh like Satanism is a system of the flesh. That's you could say it's an aspect of it. It's part of it. So, and to be fair, by the way, there are some who may see. I would say that this one is this is up to personal choice as well. Like you can, if you want to live a life of abstinence, that's fine. That's a choice that you can make, but it's not mandatory. None of this is whether it's indulgence or abstinence. None of it is mandatory. It's how you want to experience life, how you choose to experience life. See, this is an interesting. So see some of these. All right. So it says cruelty has its place when it's warranted. The Luciferian may be cruel and wrathful to those who have proven themselves worthy of being treated in such a way. Luciferianism holds the behavior of others dictates how you should treat them. There is no burden to treat others better than they deserve, though kindness is not discouraged either. See, this is starting to stray, in my opinion, it's starting to stray a little more towards Satanism. This idea of like wealth and carnal pleasure and cruelty has its place. We see a lot of that in Satanism. Indulgence in the flesh, an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. I would not see, like, Luciferians may indulge in the flesh, but it's not a primary act. It's what they are highlighting in this is not necessarily what I would highlight about Luciferianism. You see what I mean? What they're highlighting about, and see, this is why it's hard to find information about Luciferianism. What they are highlighting about Luciferianism is what is more associated with Satanism. Not that these particular things don't have a place in Luciferianism, but they're not the highlight. They're not the main point. So, and especially this one, cruelty has its place when it's warranted. Luciferianism is very much about love and empathy. And so while Luciferians aren't like going to let you treat them like a doormat or walk all over them, it is a much more loving system. It's I would not define it as accepting cruelty in any way whatsoever. And in fact, Luciferianism would be more inclined for, see, okay, Luciferianism is about using reason and wisdom. It's not necessarily about, oh, well, you should screw anyone over who screwed you over. Get revenge on everyone. And it's not about, oh, turn the other cheek to everyone. Just let everyone walk all over you and take advantage of you. Love everyone universally. No, Luciferianism is about using reason and wisdom in your decision making. And every situation is going to require a different action on your part. Whether you choose to avoid a certain person because they treat you negatively, whether you choose to show compassion and forgiveness to someone because they deserve it, or because you maybe even if they don't technically deserve it. But it's about using reason and wisdom. And you see, this is one of the things, like, really, this, if you're going to be highlighting principles of Luciferianism, they're not, in my opinion here, more highlights of the satanic element is what's being highlighted here. So, like I said, Luciferianism is more about reason and wisdom. And so, like I said, you can look at the various traditions. Like Gnosticism has Luciferian ideals. Theosophy has Luciferian ideals. Freemasonry has Luciferian ideals. Thelema has Luciferian ideals. Now, by the way, just because I'm saying a certain system has Luciferian ideals, I'm not saying, oh, this is a perfect system, go join them, they're great. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying if you look at how they're structured, they are structured in some parts on this pattern. And so, for example, if you look at Thelema, like Aleister Crowley's system of Thelema, Thelema is do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will. So what does this mean? Some people have mistakenly thought that do what thou wilt means do whatever you want. That's not what that means. So first of all, love is the law, unity under will, directed by will, love directed by will. So what is will? Because do what you wilt is the whole of the law. So Aleister Crowley teaches that every man and every woman is a star. We can make this gender neutral by just saying every person is a star. And Aleister Crowley believed that every person should find their true will, meaning their true purpose. So do what you will doesn't mean do whatever you want. It means to discover your true will, your true purpose in life, and actualize that. Find what your calling is and actualize it. And so Aleister Crowley believed that if every person found their true purpose, you would build a world of harmony and love because everything would fit perfectly, like a puzzle where all the puzzle pieces fit together perfectly. You know, someone might really love teaching and they'd be a teacher. Someone else might really love construction and be a construction worker. Someone might really love, law and get into policy building. And so, according to Crowley, if everyone found their true will, we would build this perfect constellation of stars or a perfect world of unity because everything would be in perfect harmony and perfect balance. Now, do you see, just I'm using that as an example. That is much more reflective of Luciferian ideal. That is much more reflective of the Luciferian blueprint, the Luciferian principles, not highlighting like wealth and cruelty and carnal nature. Like, first of all, cruelty is not a part of it. Carnal nature, nothing wrong with that, and nothing wrong with making money. But it's a weird thing to emphasize. These are more of what you would emphasize in Satanism, whereas like you take a look at the idea of Theliman, like finding your true will, building a world of stars where everything is in harmony by finding your purpose, a world united by love under will. That is much more of a Luciferian blueprint, a Luciferian ideal, and something to highlight. You see why it's hard to find information on Luciferianism out there. It's not this structured system. Let's see what the other principles they list here. Conversion is not a goal. The Luciferian considers himself a member of an elite group of self-determined people, and he has no interest in converting others. Luciferians see no value in large numbers of like-minded believers who may have less than full dedication. The Luciferian path is one that people seek through self-determination, not one that seeks followers. You know, see, I don't... So I certainly wouldn't say it's not about conversion, but this has a very elitist secret society sort of attitude where it's like, oh, we are better than everyone else. And so, you know, we don't associate with the rabble. Well, that's completely contrary to, again, the Luciferian principles. What does Lucifer do? Lucifer falls to earth to help humanity. That's part of the archetype. Prometheus steals the fire from the gods and gives it to humanity and then is tortured for it. Jesus Christ hangs out with the sinners and the sinful. And so it's about bringing, not about converting, but about bringing knowledge and teaching. So in my opinion, and remember, a lot of this is my perspective, but I'm giving you my perspective on the Luciferian ideals based on my years of study and research. And you can make these clear connections when you look at these archetypal patterns and you study these stories. You can see Lucifer is not an elitist who, struts around above everyone else and thinks of everyone else as peons or anything like that. No, the Luciferian ideal, which is the Christ ideal, is about the light bringer, the bringer of light, the bringer of knowledge, the morning star, herald of the day, shining the light over the earth, filling the earth with light, not hiding it in the dark for, only the special people who know the secret handshake. I don't like that. Anyway, acceptance of Abrahamic faiths, The Luciferian respects people of Abrahamic faiths and accepts their beliefs even while disagreeing with them. While Luciferians have nothing against Christian, Jews, and Muslims on a personal level, they disagree with what they see as subservience to demanding an arbitrary God as practiced by those faith systems. So I would say that in the Luciferian ideal, this is another one that's a little iffy. In the Luciferian ideal, they have nothing wrong with the esoteric interpretation of these systems. The esoteric, the symbolic, the metaphorical interpretation of these systems. But the literal interpretation of these systems are very negative. Why? Because they obstruct the path to enlightenment. So, this is another one I wouldn't really say is totally accurate here. Support and protection of the natural world. Luciferians share some beliefs of New Age philosophies in their celebration and protection of the earth, or terra, and the natural world. They strongly disagree with some religious systems that see man's role as one which is entitled to freely use and abuse natural resources. This I would agree with. Yes. Art and sciences are equally cherished. Luciferianism adheres to a Renaissance attitude when it comes to arts and sciences. Both creative expression and scientific exploration and understanding are regarded as equally important to mankind as a whole and to our individual personal development. This I agree with as well. Focus on the present day. Luciferians do not believe in the Abrahamic religion's doctrine of an afterlife that is paid for by suffering in the present life. Instead, it is believed that one should live for the present day and make the most of what is here and now. Happiness today is proof that good choices have been made, and there is no expectation that suffering today is necessary for happiness tomorrow. See, again, so weird. It's something like this would be perfectly fine to emphasize in Satanism. Satanism does not believe in an afterlife. They're all about the here and now. Luciferians, the Luciferian blueprint, however, is very much about there being a metaphysical domain. Now, it's still important to create a better earth right here and now. But this idea that, to emphasize that one should live for the present day and make the most of what is here and now. I mean, you should make the most of what is here and now. But this almost has the air of like denying the spiritual or not putting an importance on the spiritual, which is a weird thing to emphasize. Would not emphasize that with regard to Luciferian. I hope this is helping, by the way, to really show, first of all, why it's hard to find information on Luciferianism and how when you do, and this is one of the better ones. When you actually do, it's not really that much about Luciferianism. They're highlighting more satanic principles. All right, here's all right. Let's look at this one. Sounds good. Enlightenment is the ultimate goal. There we go. Finally. Let's see what this says. This is sounding more in line. All knowledge is good. Ignorance, however, leads to all sorts of problems. Hatred, lack of success, the inability to advance. Unlike other belief systems in which faith plays a primary role, Luciferians celebrate knowledge of all types as the key to enlightenment and happiness in this life. Yes. The only thing that threw me for a bit is the last three sentences, in this life, because this is where it kind of gets pulled back to like more of a satanic vibe about like, oh, this life, here and now, where it is about this life, but it's also much more than this life. Remember, Luciferianism is about apotheosis, going beyond human, transcendence, both immanent and transcendent. But yeah, knowledge is good, ignorance is bad, enlightenment is the goal, and a celebration of knowledge as the key to enlightenment. Yes, I would say that aspect of it is now getting more in line with the Luciferian blueprint, the Luciferian ideal of the Promethean, the light bringer, the morning star, the herald of the dawn. Free will and personal responsibility are primary. Each person is responsible for their own fate, which is determined by his or her own talents and efforts. Finding ways around life's roadblocks is an expected part for Luciferians, and overcoming them is a cause for pride and happiness. They're also expected to accept any unhappiness that arrives due to the bad choices they make. Yeah, I mean, sure. Again, this is just odd to emphasize because that would fit in perfectly well with Satanism as well. And skepticism is encouraged. Knowledge is regarded as fluid and subject to revision and change. Hence, the Luciferian is encouraged to keep an open mind and be willing to revise his or her ideas of what constitutes truth and understanding. All ideas should be tested for practicality before being adopted as truth, and circumstances may require former truths to be abandoned. Skepticism, yes, absolutely. Being open-minded, absolutely. Practicality, that's a little weird one to put in there. Again, making things seem very like earth-focused or utilitarian kind of. So ultimately, like this is one of the better articles out there on Luciferianism. But again, the parts that that are very much associated with Luciferianism, like enlightenment is the ultimate goal, there's just one paragraph on that, and the rest are kind of parts of it, but are still leaning a little more towards the like satanic current. When we look at, like I said, when you start to look at the truth, so the real way, like if you really want to learn about Luciferianism, in my opinion, if you really want to learn about Luciferianism, there aren't any books or articles that I have seen that really hit the nail in the head. If I find one, I'll share it with you guys. In my opinion, the best way to learn about Luciferianism is to study the myths and archetypes associated with Lucifer, like Prometheus, like Sophia, like the Gnostic Christ, and getting a feel for what those archetypes and patterns describe. Knowledge, light, wisdom, collectivity, transcendence, apotheosis, self-transformation, gnosis, wisdom, reason, love, empathy. And once you really get that nailed down, you can start to, you kind of have the eyes to see now, and you can recognize when that Luciferian current, and what is that quote by Manly P. Hall? The energies of Lucifer. Let me read that quote to you. The quote is, if this website will, oh, this is a Twitter post. I don't want to do that. Let me. So Manly P. Hall was a 33rd degree Freemason, and this is in a book that he wrote called The Lost Keys of Freemasonry. And Manly P. Hall says, when the Freemason, learns the key to the warrior on the block is the proper application of the dynamo of living power, he has learned the mystery of his craft. The seething energies of Lucifer are in his hands. And before he may step onward and upward, he must prove his ability to properly apply energy, etc., etc., etc. So I just mentioned that because it's sort of apropos here, sort of fitting. So like I said, you study the myths, you study the legends, you get a feel for what that Luciferian blueprint is, what that Luciferian archetype is, you know, through Prometheus and Sophia and the Gnostic Christ and these different light bringers, illuminators. There's even a being called the Illuminator in, I believe, the Apocalypse of Adam, I want to say. And then you can start to recognize these patterns in these different traditions. So then you can start looking at a Thelema and Theosophy and Freemasonry and Gnosticism or whatever the systems are. And you can pick up on when those patterns are there. And it's not going to be the whole thing because they just integrate parts of it. But like I said, you can look at Thelema and start getting, this idea of finding your true will, understanding oneself, having knowledge and conversation with one's higher self, or HGA, creating a planet that's about mutual harmony, united under love and will, and just these various systems. And then you kind of have the eyes to see, and you can start to understand it that way. So I hope this sheds a little more light, no pun intended, a little more light on the subject, because like I said, if someone out there finds a good article or something on it, let me know. But for the most part, most of the books, most of the articles out there on Luciferianism will have bits and pieces of what I consider to be Luciferian, but will be mixed in with like a lot of satanic leaning principles, just highlighting things that are more satanic. So if you want to know about Luciferianism, what it really means, study that archetype. Go straight to the source. Connect to that archetype. Do exercises. Use tarot cards, whatever you want to do. Meditate. Look at those myths. Get a feel for what that Luciferian archetype is. That bringer of light, that bringer of knowledge, a teacher, that Christ-like bringer of knowledge, the morning star, the herald of the dawn, and understand what that energy and what that pattern means. And then you'll be able to recognize it when you see it in these systems. And you'll be given that, sort of like that master key. You'll be able to understand it when you see it. And then when something pops up that isn't it, you'll be like, well, wait a minute, that doesn't seem right. That doesn't seem like it's in that current. And by the way, no judgment again. I have nothing against Satanism, by the way. I think Satanism is a huge step up from Christianity. It's just not Luciferianism. And I think it's unfortunate when Luciferianism starts to get mixed in with that because of misunderstandings. But yeah, if you guys want to know more about Luciferianism, let me know in the comments. Tell me, because we could definitely explore it deeper. There's a lot we could talk about. We could start doing exactly what I said. If, like I said, study the myths and the legends and go through these different systems. If you would like me to actually do that with you, like we could do live streams going through these myths and legends and then take a look at these different systems and showcase, different Luciferian ideals and principles within them. Let me know, because we could definitely do that. So tell me in the comments if that's something that you would like to see. Check out my video called Satanism versus Luciferianism if you want to know more about the difference. I'll put a link in the video. And yeah, if you enjoy my work, check out my first book, Neogenesis, Dawn of the New Mind. The link is in the description of this video. You can check it out right now and become a member if you want to help my channel grow. We're having a members only video right after this called Do You Actually Have Two Minds? As we explore the theory of bicameralism. It's going to be really interesting. And I want to give a big shout out to everyone who supports. Thank you all so much, especially Renaissance Fairy, Cassidy, Angela, DB, Nusalina, Christopher, Eon, Vanessa, Dallas. Thank you very much.